A little confusion here. They're down to 9 on the play clock. Now they're trying to wave somebody back on the field. They're down to 5. They don't want to use their last time out here. Late setting up with 3. Snap to Purdy. Play action. Back to pass. Under pressure. Flush to the right. Being chased. He's going to lob late for the end zone. It is intercepted! Intercepted! Trey Brown did it again! Trey Brown made a play here against Texas. He made the biggest play of the game here against Baylor. And in 2020, he does it again. And you can unhitch the wagon. Put the ponies in the barn. The Big 12 is still painted crimson and cream. Wow. It is a play action, back to pass Rattler. Down the middle, looking for Mims. He dives and he caught it! Wow! Marvin Mims! Full extension, diving backwards. That was marvelous. Baker's got it, gonna throw. 4-man rush, steps up, he's gonna throw it deep down the right sideline. Andrews wide open! 20-15, 10-5, it's a touchdown! Oh, mama! Ellinger in the shotgun. He's got it. Sooners twist up front. He has time. Lob toward the end zone. It's intercepted! Trey Brown! You can unhitch the wagon! Oklahoma wins in 4 overtimes! A Red River showdown for the ages!
There we go. Now we're unmuted. Modern technology. Gotta love it. Welcome back to STAA Live, where we get to visit with some of the greatest voices all across the country in lots of different realms. And today we have an extremely special guest with us, the voice of the Oklahoma Sooners, Toby Rowland, gracious enough to spend a little time as he gets ready for football season. And I know many of us also preparing for our football seasons around the country. Toby, thanks for joining us, and looking forward to having a fun conversation here.
Well, thank you, Brendan. It is an honor to be on with you today. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to this chat.
We've got a comment section open, so for anybody that wants to address, a certain question or certain topic, we'd love to make this interactive. We've got a few things we want to hit on here along the way, but please send in your questions, and we'll get to as many as we can. Toby, why don't we start with maybe looking backwards here and giving folks who are not familiar with your path an idea of how you have gone from starting your career to being one of the major college football play-by-play voices for one of the biggest brands in the sport.
Well, I was an accounting major at Southern Nazarene University in Oklahoma City. It's a private university in the metropolitan area there. And my sophomore year, I was not loving debits and credits. And my dad said, "What's the greatest job you can possibly imagine?" And I said, growing up, a sports dork. I mean, I did it all. I played one-on-one baseball in the backyard by myself. I would listen to OU football games in Mustang, Oklahoma, and act out Billy Sims running into the touchdown. My brother and I would play 64-team NCAA basketball tournaments in our basement together on the Dr. J goal. And I mean, I had baseball cards. I was eaten up by it. I loved listening to Cincinnati Reds games growing up. Johnny Bench is from Binger, Oklahoma, which is not far from us. So my dad was a big Reds fan, and I became a big Reds fan too. So I love sports, and I love sports on the radio. And I said I would love to become a sports broadcaster. That's the greatest job I could possibly imagine. Specifically, that voice of the Sooners job would be the greatest and we really had this conversation because I'm a big OU fan, and John Brooks at the time and Bob Berry were legendary voices of Oklahoma Sooner football and basketball. And instead of saying that's silly and far-fetched, which maybe it was, he encouraged me to chase that dream and began pursuing a sports broadcasting major that day. And that led to an internship at a local television station in town, CBS affiliate, KWTV. I was on the basketball team at Southern Nazarene and was terrible, was not playing at all. And my coach, knowing what I wanted to do for a career, came to me before my senior year and said, in not so many words, if you will give us the scholarship back that we're wasting on you to be on the basketball team, we'll give you some money to start a sports information department. Our little school only had 2 sports, basketball and volleyball, and they were about to expand, and so they needed a sports information department. And as a part of that, he would let me call the basketball games. So my senior year, I got the opportunity to start working alongside a fantastic broadcaster named Larry Mills, who kind of taught me the ropes of calling basketball. And then I stayed on there at Southern Nazarene after I graduated for another 5 years and had to learn how to call football and baseball games too as we started those programs. And so I did that for 5 or 6 years at Southern Nazarene, went to work full-time at the TV station as an anchor and producer, on the side, called some high school games, and got to know the folks at OU. They would need a fill-in play-by-play guy from time to time for a baseball or a softball or a basketball game. That led to the sideline job opening in 2009, and was fortunate enough to get that job. And I was in heaven, honestly. There's a lot of things to this day I miss about being on the sideline. I mean, being on the sidelines is you're right down in the heart of the action, and there's an adrenaline rush down there that's unlike anything else. But I was on the crew. I was on that beloved OU radio crew with Bob Berry and Merv Johnson, and traveling the United States with OU football. And that was, I thought this is as good as it's going to get. And then in year 2 on the sidelines, Bob Berry, the legend who had been broadcasting games in this state for 50 years, decided to retire. And, we put our name in for the job and got lucky. Honestly, I don't know why. Joe Castiglione, our athletic director, and then David Bourne, our university president at that time, saw fit to select me. There were many other men who were, or women, I'm sure, who were more qualified and more talented. Maybe they saw the passion I have for the University of Oklahoma, being an Oklahoma kid and what this job meant. But for whatever reason, they selected me, and it has been, that was 10 years ago. This will be my 11th year. It's been the greatest 11 years of my life. We knew it would be special, and it's been even more so.
Incredibly cool story. The thing that stands out most to me is back at the beginning. You mentioned you're an accounting major, and I think about some of the great broadcasters, even today, who didn't study communications in college. And I remember being told at times, it's a study what you want to study, do what you want to do, and just follow what you're passionate about. Do you feel like the switch to, getting away from accounting, was that as beneficial for you as maybe it would have been for you to follow a business track, but then still work at a radio station or write for a newspaper, etc.?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know how it would have worked out had I gone the other way. Obviously, it's just speculation. I will say that the folks at my school at Southern Nazarene did an amazing job helping me get a career started. It was more than just taking a class. I mean, they were really hands-on in arranging internships, in allowing me, like I said, to call games as a senior in school. And they was on their air. This wasn't into a tape recorder. This was on an actual radio station. And I left there after 4 years feeling like I had a head start on some other people, some other students who may be in the same field because of the things that Southern Nazarene did for me in the pursuit of a broadcasting career. Ron Thulin is a name that probably you recognize, or many people out there do. He was also a Southern Nazarene graduate. And at the time, Ron was, still is, but at the top of his game with Turner Broadcasting and everything. And kind of took me under his wing. I reached out to him as a student and said, hey, I'm following this same career path. What advice can you give me? And we became good friends, and he has been a fantastic ear to listen to me as we've gone on. But all those things, I think, added up to, maybe a little bit of a head start coming out of college than I would have had if I had gotten a business major and just said, all right, when I graduate, I'm going to see if I can find my own way. I think it helped me, but that's just my story.
Yeah, everybody's a little different for sure. Let's talk about football season here, and maybe before the upcoming portion of your schedule, how about the last few months? Let's ignore for just a second sort of the change in circumstances with Sooner football and the Big 12 and the SEC, but more just, you personally, when you're in the off season still, but creeping toward getting ready to start a full season. What are some of the things that you like to do to stay organized, to stay prepared? Places you like to read up on things, or conversations with certain people you like to have to kind of help you get ready to go and be at your best?
It's I do football, men's basketball, and baseball at OU. So that's a long, fun grind, though. And by the time June rolls around, or whenever baseball season comes to an end, you're definitely look forward to a little bit of R&R. And I think there are a lot of broadcasters out there who can relate, college broadcasters especially. You look forward to the time off, and then the countdown starts for football season. And at first you kind of fight it a little bit. Like, I'm not ready. I'm not sure I'm ready to jump back into the grind and say goodbye to my family and everything. But eventually, and usually for me, it happens around the 1st of August, the excitement is just too overwhelming, and you jump in. I'm fortunate in a preparation standpoint that I have a radio show that I do on a daily basis here locally in Norman and Oklahoma City and across the state. And that kind of, by its nature, keeps you plugged in. You have to know the news of the day, and we're able to interview coaches and sometimes players throughout even the off season. And so it prevents completely going into the hibernation for 2 or 3 months. So that keeps me plugged in. I'm sure, like so many out there, I'm a pretty avid, maybe addicted consumer of websites, social media, all the news you could possibly gather, and that picks up as the football season comes along. But our athletic director here, Joe Castiglione, is a good friend of mine, and we're able to chat frequently, and several of the coaches as well. And so there's just a lot of different ways to stay on top of things. I don't know that I feel like in this role it's my job to break stories necessarily. I just need to know by next Saturday, I need to have my act together, and that spotter board needs to be squared away, and I need to know what I'm talking about. I don't need to know necessarily every nook and cranny of what's going on in the OU football program. But it is exciting, certainly this time of year, because everybody's undefeated. Everybody feels like they got a national championship team, and the anticipation of going to the starting line is, you feel giddy.
No doubt about it. And obviously with where the Sooners program is right now, there are pretty realistic expectations of making a deep run here this year. As you get into the actual grind of the season, can you give us a 10,000-foot view of what your weeks look like? You got a game on Saturday. What's Monday look like? What's Tuesday look like, et cetera?
I try as hard as possible to protect Sunday for me and my whole crew. I think it's good for our families, and it's good for our own mental well-being to try to step away and give ourselves a break. So I try to protect Sunday. That doesn't always work, but Monday is a day when you start to, I do a thing called a scene setter here, which is a video that plays the morning of the game. And for home games, they play it at the stadium before the kickoff. And that's something that I write every week. And I have to write that on Monday so that it can get produced in time to be ready for the weekend. So Monday is kind of get your checklist ready, write the scene setter day. heavy show day on Tuesday. OU has like so many Division I programs, certainly, and beyond, television studio here on campus. And so we churn out a bunch of video content throughout the week. So we have a Lincoln Riley press conference on Tuesday. We have a show called Spotlight that we record on Tuesdays, which focuses on the rest of the athletic department besides football. Then that night we go to a local barbecue joint and we do a show called The Huddle with my partner, Teddy Lehman, which is a 1-hour preview of the week ahead, and then the Lincoln Riley show that night as well. So a lot of TV duties on Tuesday. Wednesday is when I like to start to get my spotter board put together. Usually at that point, you've got a pretty good idea of who got banged up the week before, and you've got the information from the opposing media relations guys, and you can start to at least get the nuts and bolts of a spotter board put together. I do my own spotter boards. I know a lot of people have them ordered out, and there's no problem with that. I just have found for me, if I physically put together the names, the numbers, the biographical information, the statistics, I like to color code it a certain way. It takes a lot of time. But if I do that, it sticks in my brain better. And so I like to do that. I feel like it helps me come Saturday if I put in the work, usually Wednesday and Thursday, to get those all done together. You know, included in that is scheduling and doing coaches interviews. We do a pregame interview with Lincoln, pregame interview with the opposing head coach. My sideline guy will try to get some player and assistant coach interviews that we'll use in our pregame show. And then Friday is tie it all together, do some writing and editing for the pregame show, and try to get, and printing of the spotter boards, try to get everything done, if possible, before you go to bed on Friday night. That's not always possible, but that's always the goal. And I have found that, one, I sleep better Friday night if everything is tucked away and in bed. I'm not sitting there in bed thinking what I still have to get done on Saturday. And a good night's sleep, I think, is important for us to be able to perform at our peak on Saturday, especially if you got an 11 a.m. kickoff. And I also just wake up Saturday excited about the day if I know everything's done. If I know I'm ready to go, I can be more like a college football fan. I can wake up. If we got a night game, I may watch game day or whatever. I can be excited as I walk around campus and see the fans and hear the marching band and everything. If I know I'm ready, I'm prepared. So if possible, I like to get everything wrapped up on Friday evening. Sure, I forgot something in there, but there's 10,000.
Have any fun pregame rituals or things you like to do before you jump on the air to kind of put you right in the mood, knowing that it's time to go? Right
before kickoff, we do a thing. So the coin flip happens, and you got 2 minutes before the kickoff, and we toss it around to our crew for final thoughts. So we've got 3 other guys that are on air for OU, my color analyst, and then a sideline reporter and a sideline analyst. And while they're talking, which is going to take a minute and a half or so, I like to take a deep breath, look around the stadium, maybe close my eyes for a second, and remember, really kind of think upon how fortunate I am to get to do what I do. That sounds corny, but it is a very important pregame ritual to me, because I get caught up so much in the course of taking care of everything that we just went through throughout the course of a week, getting that checklist all filled out. Game days are busy. You're running around. Things happen in the booth. Something's not working quite right, and it's frantic. And sometimes I found out early on the night could be over, and I forgot to enjoy it, And so before kickoff, I like to just kind of close my eyes, take a deep breath, look around the stadium, soak it in, breathe it in, and say, wow, this is amazing that we get to do what we get to do. And I feel like it puts me in the right frame of mind to start the game.
Absolutely love that. Let's get to some of our listener questions here. Garrett says, thanks for taking some time with us. I'm going into my first year as a full-time D1 radio broadcaster. Anything you wish you would have known going into that first year, specifically managing travel?
Yes. Travel related, this has not been a problem for me necessarily because I'm boring. But if you're on the road on a Friday night, sometimes it's fun. Like we're going to New Orleans for the opener. And you can have a lot of fun in New Orleans. I'm going to go find me a bowl of jambalaya. I promise you that. But I'll head right back to the hotel room and wrap up all that studying I need to get done and get in bed at a good time. That sounds like something a parent would tell you, but it's important. I mean, it's important to know that even when you're on the road, you're there to do a job. And at least it is for me. I like to use. A lot of other guys probably have more frivolity than I do on the road. I'm pretty boring, like I said. My biggest advice I would give that I wish I had done better my first year was I took over for Bob Berry, who was his nickname was literally the legend in this state. And those were big shoes to fill. And my first year on the job or so, I got a little too caught up in the comparisons. Not that I ever thought I needed to be or wanted to be better than Bob, but I heard some of the other comparisons, like it's weird to have somebody else calling the games. And, I wasn't great at staying off social media and seeking out the immediate evaluations of touchdown calls and things like that. And I was a little hard on myself. And I heard Vin Scully interview that year where he was talking about his first year with the Brooklyn Dodgers and how after a game one day, maybe you've heard this story, Brendan, after a game one day, Red Barber came in and was upset with him. And Vin said, "Why are you upset with me?" And Red said, "Quit trying to be me," meaning Red. "We hired you to be Vin Scully." And from that point on, Vin Scully said, "Oh, I get it. I don't have to act like somebody else. I can just be me." And of course, he went on to be the GOAT. And that resonated with me. Maybe it's because it came from Vin. I don't know. But something clicked in my brain that day. And I said, I will never be as good of a Bob Berry as Bob Berry. Never going to happen. But nobody will ever be a better Toby Rowland than me. And they hired me to be me. And that from that point on, I was much more comfortable in my own shoes and my own skin, just being myself. And I did a much better job of not caring what anybody else said about it too, And I think that's important for a young broadcaster, especially. It's hard to find your own voice for a while. It's hard to be comfortable that you don't have to act like Marty Brenneman or Bob Berry or these other people that you heard growing up. You don't have to imitate them. Just be you and find your own unique voice. And because that's what you're going to do best. You're never going to be as good at being them as they are, but you can be better at being you than anybody else ever was or ever will be. So that's the advice I would give early on. Just be you, be comfortable in that, and don't give a rip what anybody else says about it.
I think that's such an interesting point, and it's great advice for maybe a follow-up question to that. For someone who is in a position where they're saying, I'm having trouble figuring out who I am. I'm early on. I've listened to lots of people. I've watched lots of broadcasters, but I'm having trouble figuring out finding myself. Did you ever have, I don't want to call it an existential crisis, but did you ever have a time where you were trying to figure out what was truly your identity? And even if you didn't have that issue, how do you go about trying to figure out being the best version of yourself and not trying to be someone else?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just that's a very deep question, by the way, but I love it. I love diving deep into a play-by-play like this. I think it's in some ways simple, in some ways complicated. It's pretty easy to recognize if you are just copying somebody, I mean, if you go back and listen to your broadcast, and I would certainly suggest that early in your career, especially, I would certainly suggest reviewing your own broadcast. And it's hard and it's cringeworthy at times because nobody likes to hear their own voice, and you hear all the mistakes you forgot you made when you went through the game. But you can hear, oh, I'm trying to act like Joe Buck right now. That sounds like something that Brad Sham would say, you know? For me, it was just, I'm a pastor's son from Mustang, Oklahoma, and I've got my own lexicon that just flows out of me. It's not imitating anybody. I say, oh, mama, on a big play because that's something I say growing up. There's a little bit of good old country boy in me. And so when I'm being authentic, I can tell, okay, that sounds like Toby. I'm not trying to be broadcaster guy. I'm not trying to find my deep voice and sound like Vin Scully right now. I'm just being myself. I'm having fun. I think the only way you recognize that is by constant evaluation of yourself. You know, keep listening back and saying, I like that. I like how that sounded. Or I don't like that. Don't ever say that again. Or you're trying to imitate somebody here. So I think that's the best way to do it. Self-evaluation.
Yeah, that's great wisdom. Another one, I know we're kind of putting you on the spot. Derek is hoping that he can see your football boards. Do you have any available? And if not, perhaps you could, PDF them or send them to us, and we can share them that way.
You know, we give them away after the game. The football crew all signs them, and we give them to fans or charities for auctions or whatever. So I do not have any, and I haven't made the ones for our opener against Tulane yet. So I apologize for that. I have some basketball boards, but I don't have any printed football boards with me. That is an unexpected phenomenon that happened several years back. Is my spotter, Greg Blackwood, posted some pictures of the spotter boards on social media, and somebody asked if they could have it after the game. I don't need it anymore, other than to show you guys once the game's over. I don't have any need for it. So if somebody else wants it, great. So we sent it to that person. And then the next week, that person posted a picture of, hey, we got these spotter boards from the OU radio crew. And somebody said, well, can I have next week? And before you know it, we got way too many requests to fill. And it's been a fun thing to be able to share them, like I said, with charitable organizations that they can auction off and things. So it's nice. You put a lot of work into those. They're kind of, you feel like they're pieces of art by the time you're done with them, and they would just be gathering dust. So I'm glad there is a desire for them out there, but unfortunately it means I don't have any with me today. I do have these. This is these are Bob Berry's final spotter boards. He gifted them to me when I got the job. And this is the Oklahoma Connecticut Fiesta Bowl back in, it would have been 2010 season. And he signed them for me. He did it all by hand, as you can tell, never did anything on computer. And it's all red ink, which would drive me crazy. I've got to have different colored inks. But that's my prized possession, is my very own Bob Berry spotter boards.
Very, very cool. The word art struck me because I have seen spotting charts that sometimes look like they belong in the Louvre. And sometimes I've seen spotting charts that are so illegible, it's chicken scratch and you can't read it.
Yeah.
And I think there's an interesting balance you're trying to strike, because the color coded thing can really help you process information. Some people prefer to write versus type. Is that ever part of your thought process of like, hey, I don't need to put too much on here, so that when I look down, I don't get lost in all this, but have enough that you feel like you've done the work?
The crafting of getting the right thing on those boards, and in a manner in which you can easily find, is it consumes way too much of my time, and I think all of our times probably. I have dialed it back through the years. Early on, I think just any piece of information, statistic, the more the better. But what I found is, and I think what a lot of people find is, when you get into the game, you use about 10% of it, and you want to be able to find it. It's more important that you can find it quickly. That's the most important. What am I likely going to need today? and how can I find it quickly? I don't care if anybody else can find it. I want to be able to find it when I need it. At a glance, things are happening fast. So this color means that. This color means that. I know that. And I know what information I've got on the board because I put it on there. And there will be things that happen. A record will be broken that you couldn't have possibly anticipated, and you're going to have to look it up. But the goal is to get everything, if possible, on those boards so that you don't have to look anything up, so that at a glance you have everything there. It is funny because play-by-play guys will compare spotter boards before game. You go over pronunciations and everything, and you can tell it is a sense of pride what everybody's boards look like, and some of them are hieroglyphics. But as long as they can read them, what do I care what they look like? So it's a fun little idiosyncrasy we have.
Yeah, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like your perspective there is more organization than memorization. Is that fair?
Definitely organization. A lot of the memorization, well, all of it happens with the opposing team. Once you get past game one, everything happens with the opposing team. And some of that can happen during the week. I feel like by the time game day gets there, I've got a pretty good idea of who the stars are for the opposing team and what numbers they are, and I can recognize them. A lot of that happens in pregame warmups. In the 2 hours you're in the booth before the game, watching the opponents and trying to do the old association of numbers with body types, so that especially wide receivers and running backs, people who are going to touch the ball a lot, so that you can immediately know them. Even then, though, it'll take me a drive or two or three before you really feel comfortable with the opponent without having to reference your board.
Got a question here from someone who has not yet called football before. First game is this Friday.
Congratulations.
Jumping right in with 2 feet.
Yeah.
Any advice on calling that first football game this Friday?
Oh, man. I need a lot more details than that. Do you have a color analyst? Are you running the board? When I started at Southern Nazarene, it was a one-man band. So you're the engineer, you're the statistician, all that kind of stuff. But my advice would be, don't say numbers, say names. And if you don't know the name, just say it was caught for a 12-yard gain until you can figure out the name. Try to be as specific as possible with yard lines, and say the score and time more often than you can possibly imagine you need to, because everybody will tell you that's the number one complaint we all get is, I turned on the radio and it took me forever to figure out what the score was. So say it until you drive yourself crazy that you're saying it so much. And have fun, just relax. There's a lot going on. It's going to go fast, but it'll slow down. And people can tell. That was one of the great gifts that Bob Berry had, is people can tell if you're having fun. There's a lot of people who can do this. There's a lot of people who can give you the right yard line and what the score is. But the ones who are the most successful are the guys and gals who you can tell they're having fun, and it comes through the radio. And listeners want to listen to. They don't want to listen to someone who sounds like they're annoyed and stressed out. They want to listen to people who sound like they appreciate what they're doing, they like what they're doing, and they're having a good time. And Bob Berry was fantastic at that. He sounded like the uncle that you want to hang out with after the game. And sometimes, like I said, sometimes you get caught up in it, and it's a stressful situation, and we all get a little robotic or whatever, and just breathe and have a good time.
Let's talk Logan's question here. I was just wondering what your setup is like on game day besides a broadcast partner. Do you have a spotter or any other people in the booth with you?
We do. We, if possible, we'll have 4 people on the front row of our booth and an engineer behind us. That's not always possible. Our first game at Tulane is a 3. It's got space for 3 down front. But in a ideal situation, I will have my statistician on one side of me and the spotter on the other, and the color analyst will be on the other side of our statistician, Teddy Lehman. The statistician is looking for trends or things that aren't readily available on a stats monitor. Most all games at this level will have stats monitors that are provided. It's nice to have a statistician there because sometimes those go out. But he's doing, for the most part, a deeper dive than you could get on television or that you could just get by saying Spencer Rattler's thrown for this many yards. He's trying to find some interesting comparisons, trends otherwise. So that's what he's doing. And yes, I have a spotter sitting next to me throughout the game as well, who is trying to help me with substitutions, looking at everything other than what my eyes are following, which is the football. Who had the key block? Who made the tackle? Perhaps there's an injury. So we're connected at the hip throughout the game, my spotter and I. And then the engineer is behind us. So we have 5 people in our booth. We have a sideline reporter and something that was, I think, a little bit of an innovation a few years ago. We have a sideline analyst as well. So it's another color analyst, but watches the game from the sideline. My color analyst in the booth was a defensive guy. Teddy won the Butkus Award. He was a linebacker. The sideline on the field is an offensive guy. Gabe Eichert was a center at OU and a great one a few years ago. So it works well. He kind of sees things from the offensive angle. Teddy sees things from the defensive angle. And Chris Plank is doing what a sideline guy does and checking on injuries and interviewing coaches and just trying to pick up everything down there. So that's kind of our game day arrangement.
Yeah, I was going to say that's really, really unique. I'm not sure if I can think of another broadcast off the top of my head that has sort of a sideline analyst. Are there instances where you might feel like you've got, for lack of a better way to say it, too many cooks in the kitchen? I mean, is it on radio, you've got to paint that picture. Is it at times challenging for you to make sure you can do your job while giving your partners a chance to do theirs?
The answer is no, but it's a good question, and it's something that we are aware of. We think we've kind of figured out something here that makes our broadcast different than everybody else, and we've been doing it for several years now. Teddy used to be the sideline analyst before he came up to the booth. We also leave our sideline mics hot at all times. They don't have to call up to the booth and say, I have something, and then we call for them to bring them on the air. A lot of broadcasts do that. They just flip the on switch, and they're free to talk whenever they have something. That could get tricky, but we've done enough games together that I think everybody has figured out my cadence and when they fit in the broadcast, when to jump in, when to jump out. And it's a dance. But when executed well, I think it sounds different than anybody else is doing, and I think it's a lot of fun. And it's a tremendous amount of information. They know at what point to get out of the way because it's time for the next play, the calling of the next play to start. Teddy knows how much time he's got to get a thought in here. Chris and Gabe aren't going to jump in after every play, but once or twice on a series, perhaps they know there's a dead spot. I can get in and out. So have there been times we've stepped on each other? Sure. But for the most part, I think it's worked fantastically well. We love it. And I think it's been good for our listeners too. We get good feedback about it.
Have a question here that I want to go back to from perhaps last week's guest, Brian Bush. But in the meantime, if you're watching, we still do have time here, I think, for a couple of other listener questions. Brian is the play-by-play voice for Michigan basketball and gave some really, really good advice on how he got into that role. And I want to sort of pose to you, Toby, what he shared with us. Brian said that the play-by-play was really a prerequisite of the job, not the destination part of the job, and that so much of what these interview processes look like for major college athletics jobs are built around trust. Does the team trust you? Does the program, the organization, do they trust you to protect their brand and put it out there the way they want it publicized? Can you maybe expound on that a little bit, one, and two, perhaps explain how that has manifested itself in your role?
Yeah, that's really profound and 100% correct. The ability to call a game is kind of what gets you the job, but it is especially now so much more than that. I mean, in many ways, you are literally a voice and in a lot of ways a face representing a university and an athletic department. So television shows come with that. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of social media presence in these days that come along with that you're involved in. emceeing of banquets. You know, we've got a big OU Nebraska game, the game of the century's 50th anniversary coming up in week 3. And along with that, there's a huge gala on Friday night where a lot of the greats in the history of Sooner and Cornhusker football, Tom Osborne, Barry Switzer, on and on, are going to be there. And I'm great privilege of getting to MC that, but there's a tremendous amount of preparation that goes into that. I think we've had, what is today, Wednesday? We've had 3 luncheons and or banquets already this week. And then you call games, you know, and you fill in when a soccer game needs to be called or whatever. So it's, I think, way more multifaceted than it used to be by the nature of computers and social media and each school having broadcast entities now, ESPN Pluses or Big 12 or SEC or whatever networks that you have to do hits on. What we're doing today, I'm representing the University of Oklahoma. Absolutely. And so the trust that has to be put in that person, that they're not going to be a shock jock and just go say whatever they want to get callers on their afternoon radio show, but that you're going to present the university, a football program or basketball program or whatever, in the right way. Yeah, that's really well said. That is a huge, huge part of the responsibility at a place like OU.
And how much of your interview process involved the coaches and athletic directors beyond maybe a rights holder?
Athletic director. I interviewed with the athletic director, the university president, and Learfield. Now, I had been at the TV station in town for a decade, and I had been on the sidelines for 2 years. So they knew me. Bob Stoops, who was the football coach at the time, knew me because I had been I'd been the sideline guy and interviewing him and in his office and all that kind of stuff. So there was already a comfort level there. And Oklahoma was bringing in a new basketball coach at the same time. So Lon Kruger was hired the same month that I was hired. So there was no need to talk to him. But it was the actual interview process involved the athletic director, the university president, and Tom Bowman at Learfield.
Good to know. Perhaps building off of that and circling back to the fact that there are some turbulent times right now in college athletics, and a lot of it surrounds Oklahoma and Texas's decision to change conferences. Because you are always representing the university, I'm sure fans recognize you when you're out at the grocery store or at the rec center or wherever it might be. Can you talk about the delicate balance that you might have to strike when having a job like this in trying to address some of the hot button topics, if we want to call them that, across college athletics that fans really want to talk about?
Well, that's a great question. And it is true. I think the best thing you can do is talk to the people above you on the food chain, and say, all right, I'm going to be out in front of people and they're going to ask questions, and how do we best present this? And that doesn't just apply to this conference situation. That applies 100 times throughout the course of a year. You want to just make sure you're on the same page with the powers that be. I think the delicate balance is the realization, and this comes with experience, the realization that you are representing something larger than yourself. And you got to be careful. You just got to be careful to say the right thing at the appropriate time. I have a little bit of a philosophy, which is what would Joe C. do? Joe Castiglione's our athletic director. And before I say something, it processes through my brain. If Joe's watching or listening, is he going to approve of what I'm about to say? He's my boss. And I think in every walk of life, whoever you're representing, that's the case. Does that limit you at times on what you might say otherwise if you were not wearing this logo on your shirt? Of course, but that's part of the job. You are a play-by-play guy, and in many ways you are a public relations guy for the university. So I am not in the business of breaking stories these days. I had that job for 10 years at a TV station. It is not important to me that I am the first to report anything. I just want to get it right, and I want to represent the University of Oklahoma in the best possible way, and I want to accurately call a game on Saturdays. That's my job.
Want to give you a comment here that's more of a comment, less of a question, but someone who clearly enjoys your work. Katie syncs the TV and radio broadcasts, which I think is always a nice thing to hear as a radio guy. You like to know that people appreciate what you do. So
thank you, Katie. I appreciate that.
And we have a question here from Logan. Calling my first college football game on the radio next week. I've called football live streams in the past. I assume that has a sort of a visual component. What are the key differences in calling a TV live stream with a game called on the radio?
Well, big difference. TV to radio is big difference. I'm sure all of you know that out there. In simple form, you talk a lot less. You let the pictures speak more than you do. I have found that when I'm calling a game on television, I'm there to tee up my color analyst. Basically, I'm gonna give you the yard line and interject myself on an exciting play or get us in and out of commercial breaks and try to do that part of the job. But it's not near as heavy a lifting as radio is. They don't want to hear you talking constantly on TV. Get out of the way, let the pictures speak, and help your color analyst be the star of the show. Radio is, obviously they can't see, so you got to fill in every detail on the radio, but dial it back. That's hard because sometimes I'll go from a radio game and go call a basketball game for TV or whatever, and I'll get a few possessions into the game and say, hang on, Toby, you're not on radio right now. Dial it back. They can see every dribble. You don't need to talk about where they are on the court at all times, but fight the urge to talk too much. Let the pictures paint the words, and do everything you can to help your color analyst shine.
Great advice. Why don't we wrap up with a question about you juggling your daily responsibilities as both a radio host and then certainly on the play-by-play side, and maybe just some of the organization and time management skills you've needed to develop to both be prepared but also be able to excel at both of those jobs.
That I was doing the radio show before the OU job came along. I've been doing the morning radio show here for 18 years now. So I thought maybe that would go away when the OU job came along, but they were not insistent on that. They said, yeah, go for it. We like your show. And so just, keep it going. So I've been able to keep them both going simultaneously. From a preparation standpoint, I will keep in my phone notes of everything throughout the day that I might want to talk about tomorrow that happens. Anything that happens throughout the day, I'll put a note down about it. Obviously, before the show that morning, it starts at 6 a.m. I'll get up in the 5 o'clock hour and just peruse what did I miss overnight, and then get into the show. And I'm done by 9 o'clock, which is very convenient because my whole day is still in front of me to take care of whatever OU duties need to be done. For example, next Tuesday, we have a press conference at noon, and then the night shows and all that taping goes on. My radio show rarely interferes with any OU duties because it's over at 9 o'clock in the morning. Now, sometimes it's a short night. If you called a game the night before on the road in Ames, Iowa, and you don't get in bed till 3 a.m., then that alarm goes off early. But it's also an advantage, and one of the reason people, I think, listen to our show is because they know I'm with the team, I'm on the road, you got the inside access, and you're going to get to hear that the next morning. So it's been good. I think listeners have come to understand they're going to get some access because of my job that maybe you can't find on other stations. I'm also not going to be the shock jock guy. I'm not going to jump out there and start saying so-and-so should be fired or anything like that, because it doesn't intersect with my other responsibility. And I think people have figured that out. And so it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of, what I have found is a lot of the people, coaches, administrators, athletes, whatever, who are on their way to work at the University of Oklahoma in the morning, listen to our show and like to give me a hard time about it later in the day. And I heard on the show, you didn't think I started the right pitcher last night or whatever. So, or text during the show and say, hey, I disagree with you saying this. So it's made for some fun interaction throughout the years.
Oh, that's awesome. Toby, we are so grateful for your time, your energy, your grace, your humility, and certainly your advice. This has been really, really helpful. And I thank you on behalf of STAA. I know there's a lot of clients that are happy that you are here, and look forward to hearing what you've got coming up here this football season.
Well, the honor is mine, Brendan. I really appreciate it. And I can see just the sliver of the Ohio State pennant behind you. So, and I think, is that the horseshoe?
It sure is.
Well, yeah. So the fact that two guys from Oklahoma and Ohio State have just had such a great hour together, I think is really speaks well to the ability of all of us in America to get along out there.
Last time you were in the horseshoe, I think there was a flag planted right in the middle of the field, if memory serves me correctly.
Right. Yep. Brendan, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Toby. Take care.